Former gubernatorial candidate Eliot Cutler pleaded guilty to child pornography possession charges today in an Ellsworth courtroom. The 76-year-old Cutler reached a plea deal on 4 felony counts of possession of thousands of images of child sexual abuse. Under the agreement accepted by the judge today, Cutler will serve 9 months in jail. During an investigation leading to Cutler's arrest last year, state police say they found nearly 84,000 files downloaded between 2014 and 2021. Now, many in the public are outraged about the 9-month sentence, saying it's nowhere near enough. But both Cutler's attorney, Walter McKee, and Hancock County DA Robert Granger came to terms on the agreement, saying it was appropriate for this case.
We provided the court with some comparative sentencing information, the likes of which I've never seen in a case like this. We were able to gather information from the Department of Corrections that detailed over the past 10 years the number of Class C convictions by defendant, and we were able to determine that the median sentence for a defendant convicted of a Class C crime like this was 6 months to serve. Eliot's sentence, of course, is 9 months.
I want to apologize to all the victimized children and to their families. My behavior helped to support an industry built upon their abuse. And I hope with all my heart that they can find healing and dignity.
The mean of all these types of cases, specifically Class C, possession of sexually explicit materials, the mean sentence to serve has been 6 months over the last 10 years. And so the egregious nature of the content of the material that Mr. Cutler had prompted an elevation to that sentence.
Cutler will also serve 6 years probation when he gets out of jail. Terms of that probation prevent Cutler from possessing sexually explicit materials, require his online activities to be monitored, and limits his ability to be around children. He also must register as a sex offender for life. Cutler has been ordered by the court to report to Hancock County Jail on June 1st.